Hey, this is Nick Magnus Aldis, and you are listening to another wrestling podcast.
It's time for another wrestling podcast.
Speak to me, warrior!
You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here.
The measuring stick just changed around here, buddy. You're looking at
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
the cream of the crop. Nobody does it better. These are the best in the world, brother. These are the best at what they do.
When we talk about the legends of the sport, there's only two in my book.
Another wrestling podcast.
Another wrestling podcast. Now can you dig that, sucker?
All right. Welcome to another wrestling podcast. I'm Steve Credo.
And I'm Jonathan Benjamin.
That's right, guys. Welcome to episode 66. Jonathan, say it. I know you want to say it, so say it.
It's
Come on, you know your line, man. It's on the cue card.
It's going to be the most amazing show, probably best show ever today. Super excited, Steve. We have none other than Nick Aldis. Magnus will be joining us today live for another wrestling podcast.
That's right, everybody. If you're listening for the first time ever, head on over to anotherwrestlingpodcast.com and listen to episodes 1 through 65. If this is the first time ever that you're listening to Another Wrestling Podcast, and I can't stress enough, this is unlike any other podcast out there. We're another wrestling podcast. And Jonathan, episodes 1 through 66, you could listen to any time of the day, any time of the week, and you won't get bored of it, you know, because it's not your typical topical wrestling show, right?
No, we try our hardest to not rehash the same old things that you've heard about or that you watched on Monday Night Raw or Wednesday or whenever. So we like to talk about things, and we have a doozy of a show topic today. I'll get into that in a second, but we like to talk about things like Royal Rumble, best entrance themes, English wrestling,
Worst gimmicks.
Worst gimmicks, best gimmicks,
Movies with wrestlers, everything and anything you guys can think of, right?
Yeah, and we really encourage all of our listeners to be very interactive. Tweet us, email us, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Tell us what you want us to talk about. It's really your show. So, I'll talk about anything, and I typically do. So, today's no different. Steve, today, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I just want to talk to you. I mentioned the Intercontinental Championship, a little known or a little talked about championship, the European Championship for WWE. I like where this is going to go already. I think we should definitely talk about it.
Well, Jonathan, okay, I guess we're having a little European theme today with Magnus on the show and whatnot, but Jonathan, the European Championship, really? I'll do the Miz.
Oh,
really?
Please don't. And it is one of the unsung heroes of the WWE title picture.
Jonathan, I never got it, man. I was like, when they debuted it, I was like, oh, a new belt? Wait, all right. I don't get it, Jonathan. What does it mean to be the European champion if you're wrestling in America and you're an American-based company?
Well, just chill out for a second, all right? Let's just calm down. Let's think about this. European champion. It was another belt that they added to the arsenal of the WWE back in the day. Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, first ever European champion. I think it was a great idea to introduce this belt because they were traveling a lot overseas at the time, but they also were needing belts because they had such a huge roster. It was around the time of the Attitude Era, so you had a lot of guys that were kind of getting lost in the shuffle. So this belt would be a way to kind of highlight some of those mid-card people because you had the World Heavyweight Championship, but you also had the Intercontinental Championship, which were kind of being held by the biggest names. But with such a large roster, like I mentioned, it was very important to have another belt to kind of throw out there for some of these guys. So that's why it's important.
Okay,
Steve.
well, riddle me this, Batman. What was it better than the IC belt or the US belt? What level was it on? Like, if you put them in a ranking order, you know, like I never knew where it stood. Was it like the first belt you get kind of a thing, or was it just above a cruiserweight belt? Or I had no idea where it ever stood.
Well, the thing that's important about the European Championship, like I said, the world was obviously your big belt at the time. Then you had the Intercontinental Championship, which was being held by The Rock, Triple H, those kinds of people at the time. But then you also had the tag team titles, which were being tossed around by a lot of high-profile people. But you had people like Val Venus, like D'Lo Brown, like Owen Hart, like even Shawn Michaels at one point. These were the people that really needed a belt to kind of get to that next level. So it was almost like what the Intercontinental Championship used to be, but during the Attitude Era, the Intercontinental Championships level got raised. So the European title was really there to kind of send that person up to the big leagues.
Okay,
and
so as I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what did it prove to win it anywhere but Europe? I mean, okay, what if I'm having a match in Kansas City, whoever versus whoever. I don't know. I can't think of two names right now. You're having a match in Kansas City or, American Town, USA for the European Championship. Does that even make sense to have a European Championship match anywhere else besides Europe?
So I'm going to say that may not have been the best idea to have it held anywhere but Europe. It could have been more of an attraction type situation, but I think it was still cool because for the most part, they got creative with it. I do remember Al Snow coming out in lederhosen at one point to prove that he was from Europe. D'Lo Brown used to go around and talk about, or he was introduced from different towns in Europe, but it kept things interesting. It was very exciting, and I think personally that today would definitely be well received to have a European Championship. I know that it's probably not the popular choice out of all the belts that they could bring back, but I see the European Championship doing for people what the United States Championship is doing for people today, with John Cena doing the Open Challenge. It's getting people's names out there that maybe necessarily would have had to start at the bottom, but this kind of put them right in the middle of things.
So, in my opinion, do you agree with me on
this? Which doesn't matter, by the way.
Of course it matters, everybody. Don't listen to Jonathan. Jonathan, if you had it today, now I personally would love to see have like Rusev versus Sheamus, for example, or Wade Barrett versus, whatever. Do you keep it within the wrestlers from another country, or at least the European continent, or, as long as you're not American to win it? Would it make sense to keep it within those, those factions of wrestlers from across the pond, kind of a way thinking it? Because I mean, you don't want like anybody or any average Joe just winning it. Like, should it mean something to win it for somebody who's from, I don't know, like Finn Balor, example, another guy from across the seas, like somebody that's not from America to win it? Would it make sense to have it like that, to where you never really defended against any American kind of a thing? I think I would personally, I'd get it if it was kind of like that, if it was just for people from not America, not to be so segregated or, or whatnot, but, you have a lot of guys who just aren't from America anymore, and you could have a whole division of guys, with the European Championship today, and that would make sense, but I think they kind of killed it in the Attitude Era.
Well, in the Attitude Era, like I said, there were so many people, and they needed to give titles to people just to keep things going. There was also the light heavyweight title back then, and there was just a plethora of titles. Today, everyone was complaining that there was the two world heavyweight titles, and then they combined them into one, and then now people are complaining that there's just one. And so it's a kind of never-ending battle. You can't please everybody, but yeah, to your point, I think there's a lot of people that have some European flavor today. So let's say that those people get to fight for it, and there's only a small group of people or whatever. I was still waiting for there to be like a huge faction in the United States, in WWE more specifically, of like Sheamus, Barrett, Paige, Neville, Balor, like all those guys could come together and create this huge, awesome Sheamus, awesome faction. But you guys, while you're listening to this today, we want you to get on Twitter at A Wrestling Pod, A Wrestling Pod. And tell us what your thoughts are. Tweet us. What are your thoughts about the European title? Maybe who your favorite European champion was. Should it be brought back today? Anything and everything. We love to hear from you guys. So at A Wrestling Pod, and let us know.
Yeah, and let us know if you're one of the marks out there who actually have a European title replica. And tell me, why did you ever spend the money on it? Because I want to know. I mean, out of all the belts to buy, you bought the European Championship. I want to deep down know. Tweet us. Let us know why you bought it. Out of any other belts, you bought that one. It only lasted a few years, so I really want to know. That's what I'm getting at, Jonathan.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, and I have to say this is something that's pretty amazing. It's a European show, a little European flair, and I am a collector of all things wrestling, right? You knew that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, I got in the mail the other day, and I know you got one as well.
I did.
This amazing new magazine. It is called Calling Spots, and they say that they are the Professional Wrestling Fans magazine, which goes really well for us because we are the Professional Wrestling Fans podcast. Trademark. Every time that someone says that, we get a quarter. Steve, just going through this magazine, what were your thoughts initially? Because now the WWE magazine is no longer with us. They ended last year, and so we get a few magazines, but it's not even from WWE anymore. So I was really hurting when it came to not getting wrestling magazines. So what were your thoughts about this magazine?
Jonathan, exactly. It's definitely worth any fan out there getting. It's not that much. It's only $3 US dollars. If you're buying it from America, if you're listening to us in America, guys, head on over to callingspots.com. Jonathan, I missed the days of yesterday when I went to the store and picked up a great wrestling magazine to read it. They're far and few between these days, and I mean, these guys, custom artwork on the front page throughout the whole magazine, and it's a great read. It's like when you pick up a magazine, it's a lot of ads, a lot of filler and stuff. They have a lot of great articles written by a lot of great fans out there. It's worth reading, and if you're a fan, you have to have this magazine. We have it. You guys should have it too. So, Jonathan, I'm a fan of Calling Spots magazine already.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Like, they do it where it's either you can buy it for print or you can download it, and you can get back issues and all that stuff online. Be sure to give them a follow on Twitter at Calling Spots. They're also on Facebook at facebook.com/Calling Spots. They are on Instagram at Calling Spots. Let them know that you heard about them on our podcast, and just support another independent wrestling promotion, really, because we're independent. We're doing this for you guys. They're doing it for you. And it's an amazing magazine. I wish that they were, here in the United States, and hopefully they'll become very popular over here. Their mantra, is very simple. They say that they provide alternative wrestling content, and they don't just bash Raw, which is very nice of them to not bash all of that. But Calling Spots magazine, check it out. We really appreciate them sending us the magazine. I have already, as of today, become a subscriber to Calling Spots magazine. I can't wait to get my next one in the mail. But they do have, for those of you who are just getting this message right now, they have a book for $9.99 that you can buy that kind of chronicles their first first issues. So you should definitely get on there and get that. I can't say enough good things about Calling Spots magazine, so From here at Another Wrestling Podcast, we give it 2 thumbs, 2 big foam fingers up, maybe, I guess. I don't know.
Definitely. And Jonathan, you mentioned it's in print or in, digital download, but guys, don't take the easy way out. You can if you want to, but I mean, the print version is awesome. It's great to just have a simple magazine in your hand these days. You know what I mean? Instead of looking at it on your phone, looking at it on your iPad or whatever. It's a great magazine. I'm looking through it right now as we speak, Jonathan, and it's great to pick up a print magazine of something pro wrestling material related. So it's don't take the easy way out, guys. The best part, I think, is holding the magazine in your hand and actually being able to read it anywhere, and not always depend on technology out there. So, guys, pick it up today. Like Jonathan said, let them know AWP sent you. Jonathan, though, we're talking about the European Championship. We're talking about Europe pretty much, as we got our friends from across the pond from calling spots. So why don't we talk to another guy who's not quite from here, but you all know who he is. He's Nick Aldis, also known as Magnus, joining us right now in the studio.
Another Wrestling Podcast is excited to welcome our guest today. He's an author, a former world champion, and currently he's getting set for his debut with Global Force Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Nick Magnus Aldis. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, we have to congratulate you on becoming a father not too long ago. How are you enjoying fatherhood?
It's really great. Anyone. It's one of those things, and the cliche thing. Everyone who, it's one of those things that everyone says, but it really is true. If you have a child, then you completely understand. And if you don't, you probably don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all I can say for me is that it completely gave me a whole new sort of hustle and a whole new sense of calm and purpose. It didn't, it's funny because I thought that I would probably become more neurotic about things like money and things like that, because of having someone to provide for. But actually, in a weird way, it gave me a bit more purpose in terms of saying, you know what, like I'm going to trust my gut and I'm going to do this or do that, and I'm, going to try and do everything I can to provide as much as I can. So it gave me my hustle back.
Sure, yeah. Now, is there any chance, we'll see him training to follow you in your footsteps one day? I know it's kind of early, but
yeah. Well, it's a lot of people have been asking us that and saying like, he's got great genetics, and he's gonna like his. But for us, honestly, we both have the same opinion, whereas we're not going to discourage him from it, but at the same time, we're not going to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do.
Sure.
All I cared about was that he came out healthy and happy, and he's an awesome kid. So he's, I'm sure, I can't help but feel at some point or other he's going to interact with the business on some level, because by the time he's walking and talking, like, I'm still very much going to be active in the business. I'm sure of that. So it's, he's definitely going to be exposed to it. So, I mean, who knows?
All right.
Now, it's pretty obvious, judging by your accent, that you aren't from around here originally. Can you talk to us about your journey from England to the United States? How did that happen?
Sure. Well, I broke in the wrestling business in, I think, 2005 or 2006. I think 2005, with the Knight family, who are more well-known now based on the fact that their youngest daughter, Paige, in WWE, has obviously had the incredible success and is having the incredible success that she's having. And there's a great example of someone who has been exposed to the business since they were born, and it's obviously showing through in her instinct and her talent. I broke in with her parents, Ricky Knight and Julia, otherwise known as Soraya Knight, and they were based in Norwich, which is about 45 minutes from where I grew up. Started going to their camps, and then they ran a lot of shows. They would run as often as they could as far as the training school and stuff is concerned. I think they have a more permanent school now, but back then they would sort of run long, intensive weekend camps whenever they could. So I soaked up as much of it as I could, and then I started going to another school just outside of London called Dropkicks, because it ran every single week, and Wade Barrett trained there, and Marty Skell, who's doing really great on the Indies now in the UK, and a lot of other guys sort of came through here and there. Doug Williams would come and be a guest trainer. Johnny Storm would come and be a guest trainer. And it was actually there that Doug went on one of his trips there as like a guest trainer, kind of worked with me a little bit in my very, very early days as a trainee, and then actually helped me get booked for a couple of promoters. So sort of said, this kid's got something, and he can, he's got a good grasp of the sort of old school sort of British fundamentals and stuff like that. And I actually had my first ever singles match, I believe. I'd been in a few tags, 6-man tags and Royals and stuff for Ricky Knight to sort of break me in gently. But my first actual singles match was actually with Doug Williams, which was funny because it was in a traditional British rounds match. It was 5-minute rounds and 2 out of 3 falls, stuff like that. And that really helped me on the independent scene in England, because I sort of off the back of that got booked, started getting booked a few more places, and then eventually I got the word. Everyone in England was sort of trying to work for Brian Dixon because he had so many shows. He had all the Butlins shows, and he was also running a lot of live events, and very well attended. He was a very good promoter. So I basically one day just picked up the phone at 18 years old and called him, which seems so bizarre now to do. But I just called him on the phone, and he just answered, and because that's what all the guys had told me to do. They just said, just call him and just tell him that, tell him who you are, and tell him that tell him that you're 6'4", and that, you got a decent look, and you can, you're not completely terrible, although I wasn't far off that. And he'll get booked, and sure enough, he was like, okay, when can you start? And then after that, I wrestled more or less like full time, like about 6 days a week, most of the time for Brian for about a year there. And then off the back of that, somewhere along the line, I got cast for this little acting part. I forget exactly how that came about, but a casting guy or someone came to one of the Butlin shows, saw me, and then they offered me this little acting part, which paid like a couple of grand, which to me at the time was like a huge amount of money. And then he also happened to have a little agency that did like sort of predominantly stunt guys and that sort of thing. But he just said, well, maybe if, every now and then these things come up, these casting calls come up for like wrestlers or stuff like that, and then a few months later is when they announced they were bringing back Gladiators, American Gladiators, the British version, to TV. And he got me an audition, and I got the part. And then obviously it gave me a huge amount of exposure, and some money in my pocket, and a big public profile. And that caught the attention of Dixie and TNA, and then they offered me a contract, and I came over to the States.
Nice. Now, Nick, I've never moved to another country, so I can't, answer this question, but did you ever experience any big challenges from moving from, England to the USA? Was there anything, that comes to mind that was just, I don't know, maybe a challenge for living in another country?
Well, I will say this. I mean, the big issue for most people coming to America, the Brits especially, stuff like that, is doing all the visa stuff, all the visa paperwork, and going to the embassy, and the interview and all that sort of stuff. I've been through that, about 4 or 5 times. A couple of times to renew, and then a couple of times because I've lost my passport, or had to, or passport expired. So if you get a new passport, then you have to get a new page, and every time you have to go through all the same thing again. But I will say this: for whatever reason, TNA, their legal department or Panda Energy or whoever it was who was handling it, they always seemed to do a very, very good job of that and made it as easy as possible for me. I really, considering that a lot of the WWE guys that I knew told me these horror stories of how difficult it was, or how what a sort of what a ball ache the whole process was. I always had a relatively easy time, I have to say. It was always pretty straightforward, a lot of waiting, and a lot of sort of bureaucracy. Like, you have to make sure all the forms and everything are good. And, the embassy in London is pretty bizarre. Like, I don't know whether it's just from the sort of after 9/11 or what, but like the embassy is like the security protocol is just bizarre. Like, they make you all stand outside, like regardless rain or shine, you have to stand outside and wait until they let you in. Like, and wow. So like, I've been there before and just been like either like, sweating buckets in the summer or just like, soaked, like, because it's been like pouring rain. But other than that, like, it's pretty plain sailing. As far as like the actual sort of physical move, I literally came to the United States with like a bunch of clothes in my bags. That was it. I'd sort of buy everything from scratch. I came over and basically stayed in like one of those sort of extended stay sort of hotels, like not a very nice one, like a crappy Travelodge in Clearwater, I think.
Sure.
And then while I looked around for an apartment, and then the toughest thing for me for early on when I first came over was that I was like 22, and even though I actually had built up a decent credit score in the UK, it didn't mean anything in the US. Like, they basically went, well, you don't have a credit score, and I'd be like, well, I do have one in England. That doesn't matter, doesn't count. So, getting things like you have to show them your visa and your contract and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, ultimately, like, it was all pretty, these are small problems in the grand scheme of things compared to what some people have to go through.
Sure.
So I can't really complain about anything like that. It's, and I love America. Like, I always dreamed of coming to America. I know it's like a very cliche thing to say, but I always did. So I was just so, and for me, you have to remember that my first sort of year or so with TNA, I was still living in the UK. They were flying me in and out for TVs and all that, which is unbelievable to think of now. I can't believe sometimes that I did that schedule, like all those flights all the time, those long flights. And, because I was doing all the house shows and all the TVs and going back and forth, but I had still had commitments in the UK, so there wasn't really any discussion about it. And then one day, I sort of said to Terry Taylor, and said, you guys must have spent. I worked it out in my head quickly and said, I worked out that they basically spent as much on flying me as they had on paying me. And I was just like, is there some way we can split the difference and you just give it all to me if I move here? And that was pretty much how I negotiated my first guaranteed contract. Was I basically said, like, you spent X amount on like paying me this per show and all these flights, so why don't you guarantee to pay me X amount and I'll move to Florida? And they were like, that would be a good deal. So that was pretty much how it worked out the first time.
Nice.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned it earlier, English wrestling kind of differs from what we're accustomed to here in the United States. Who are some of your favorite English wrestlers that you've had the chance to maybe see or even work with?
Well, to see it wasn't. I didn't really get a chance to see that many live because, really, by the time I broke into the business, the scene was very much like either sort of very American style shows because that's what the audience wanted because they'd seen American wrestling for so long on TV, or just because it changed. That sort of traditional wrestling presentation had kind of disappeared from England, although it still had a bit of a resurgence. But now, like, the indie scene in the UK is thriving. It's as good as it's ever been. There's some incredible stuff going on there now. But when I started going to Dropkicks, there was a very, very heavy influence of the World of Sport era of wrestling. A lot of the trainers there, like Tony Scarlo and guys like that, were very much about, they were all from that era, and they were very much, a lot of the guest trainers were guys from that era. Even Mick McManus, who was a huge star in the UK back in the 70s and 80s, he actually even came in one day, which is a pretty big deal to a lot of us, who had sort of, because, if you talk to someone like my dad, I mentioned wrestling, like that'll be one of the first names he says. Oh, I used to watch Nick Magnus and Jackie Pallo and, Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy and stuff. But after I went back and then I really started studying it. And then my favorites from that era, probably the first guy that comes to mind is Mark Rollable Rocco. He was actually the original Black Tiger in Japan. Just a brilliant athletic wrestler. Just a real, like, he was the guy who was able to take that neat kind of very sort of compact British wrestling style of like chain wrestling and holds and counter holds and things like that, and then incorporate like this high impact, like fast moving sort of battering ram kind of stuff, like big, like heavy blows and stuff like that. Dynamite Kid obviously was the biggest innovator of transitioning that into like the gymnastic stuff into like really good quality wrestling and high impact sort of believable stuff. There's a guy called Steve Wright who is Alex Wright's father. He's an incredible wrestler. He did a lot in Japan. There's some stuff that if you go and look at some of his stuff in Japan, it's really great. Marty Jones. A lot of people talk about Johnny Saint. Like his knowledge of holds and counter hold stuff is ridiculous, and he had really great conditioning. And obviously, but for me, I was always a bigger fan of a guy called Steve Gray, who doesn't get as much of the recognition as Johnny Saint does. But Steve Gray was like just brilliant at all of the counter hold stuff, but he was also a really good babyface. He was really good at selling and had a really experience. There's lots of Boy Collins, Finley. Those are some incredible matches that stand the test of time even to this day. So they look a great guys from England.
Sure.
Well, the internet and wrestling community was a buzz lately. Talks of you joining Global Force Wrestling. Are you excited about this new opportunity?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't on board because obviously taking a risk. But Jeff Jarrett has always been a guy who looked out for me and went to bat for me, believed in me before a lot of other people did, and saw more for me down the road, and understood that I, got the, was really a student of the game and really wanted to be more than I was. Gave me a great opportunity to showcase that in India, gave me more responsibilities, helped me really grow as a performer, and then it coincided, with him starting Global, kind of coincided with me feeling like I had maxed out at TNA, like I'd maxed out my earning potential, and I'd maxed out my creative potential. Like I'd done everything I could do, worked with everybody I could work with. There was no one left I wanted to work with, and I maxed out my earning potential. That was really the long and short of it. Was I knew that, like, if I stayed there any longer, I was just going to be running in place. Like I'd done everything I could do, and it was time for me to. I wanted to see my contract through. I'd always made that promise that, when I signed that last contract a couple of years ago, I said, I'll see this through because I like to stay to my word, but then I'm out of here.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Now, with Global Force Wrestling, the roster's, pretty much taking shape right now. Is there anybody out there that you're hoping to get a chance to work with, maybe that you haven't yet?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the great things about Global already is I've already got to work with some new people with some really good talent that I haven't really seen a lot of, or heard about and never had a chance to work with. I've already done some live events for Global. I started a couple of weeks ago on the Loop in up in the Midwest. And I worked with Tommaso Ciampa one night, and I worked with Congo Kong on the other two nights. I enjoyed them both. The two guys I worked with who are both very, very good. So, and for me, I think out of everybody that's on the roster at the moment, the guy I'm looking forward to working with is PJ Black at some point. I think I'd love to wrestle him. I think that I really enjoy working with those kind of wrestlers because I always like being the cat in the cat and mouse. You know what I mean? And those are my favorite kind of matches to have, and I think I could have a really good one like that with PJ.
Awesome. Now, you've been doing a lot of media lately and talking about Global Force Wrestling, but also your newest project, which is the Superstar Body Book. What made you decide to write this book, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, really, it was just one of those things where I would get frequently, I would be asked at meet and greets or through my website, fan mail or Twitter or whatever. People would, I would get this constant sort of like, what can I do to get in better shape? Like, how do you get in shape? Like, how do you train? Like, what do you eat? What supplements do you take? And, it was always in the back of my mind because I just love health and fitness. Like, that's my other big passion in life besides from wrestling, and I developed the passion for fitness, and bodybuilding and everything like that because of my desire to look better for pro wrestling, because I was such a skinny kid. I didn't have a very positive body image. So I always, and I realized that a lot of magazines, are just a magazine full of commercials, and a lot of books can become very, very wordy and very sort of, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of books are very kind of, I don't mean like arrogant, but some of them are very much like, this is my fail-proof system, and like, this is how you do it, like, follow this exact program to the letter, eat exactly this, like, follow this, because like they think that's what, and I don't think that's the right approach. I've always believed that, give a man a fish and he can feed himself for a day, but give him the means to catch his own fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what the premise of the book is. It's like, cutting through all the crap. Here's the fundamental 411 of what you need to know. Like, and it's a lot of it's like practical stuff, like, how to choose the right gym. Like, if there are a lot of different gyms in your area, like, some people don't have that, are afforded that choice. But if you live in America, chances are you probably are. So it's like, choosing the right gym and how to do all these, the thing like supplements, like the supplement industry is a $1 billion industry, and so much of the stuff in a lot of supplements is just crap. It's just filler, there are little things in there like, look, these are the fundamental things of like that go into all of them. You can buy them separately, and here's how you can do it on a budget. And just things like that, and it's really just like the basics, not just the basics, but it's just like the 411 of like, all right, look, if you want to get bigger, this is what you need to do. If you want to get leaner, this is what you need to do. Like, and it's pretty cut and dry. There's a lot of things in there that go against, a lot of the typical stuff that's pumped out there by mass media, because they always have an agenda to sort of sell you something, whereas this is more like, this is the reality of it. You don't have to live like a monk. You don't have to eat plain chicken breast, every 2 hours, blah, 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 like this and that. You don't have to live like that. You can enjoy, eggs and bacon. You can do this and that. It's just ways and means of how to manipulate your body to adapt. Plus, I think the other thing about the books that I always wanted to do and I'm really proud of is the fact that I basically said, look, you shouldn't ever take one person's advice. Don't just take my word for it, okay? Like, don't just blindly believe everything I tell you. Here's Rob Terry. Like, look at him. Here's his take on, like, how to supplement, like what he does. Here's Kurt Angle, the greatest wrestler ever lived, an unbelievable athlete, one of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen. Here's what he does as far as mental visualization. Here's his prep, here's his, like, take on how he's been able to keep himself at such a high level. Girls, you want to know why Brooke has such a, has that famous, butt and legs? Like, here's a workout routine. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there's all sorts of great guys like that. There's a friend of mine, Nick, who's a world-class trainer in Baltimore, who's worked with like NBA players and NFL players and stuff like that. Like, he's written a really great piece. The CEO of Natural Stack Supplements has written a great piece. There's all kinds of different people. It's called Superstar Spotlight, where there's all sorts of different people who have interjected their stuff. So you're really not just getting my advice. You're getting advice from all the people that I've interacted with, had the privilege to get advice from through the years, and now it's all together in one book.
That's great.
Now, where can people find this book? Is it online or is it in the stores?
Yeah, it's available on all the major, basically all the major sort of book outlets: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Book Depository. You can download it to all the major e-readers. Paperbacks available. I think hard copies on pre-order. I think you can get maybe hard copy from the UK if you want to pay the shipping if you're in the US. But to get all the different options. I mean, you can pretty much, if you just search the Superstar Body, it will come up. But if you want to get all the different ways you can get it all at the website for it is superstarbodybook.com, or one word, superstarbodybook.com.
All right. Now, Nick, other than wrestling, you have some acting credits to your name, too. Do you have any new projects in the works that you could tell us about, or maybe, something in the future that you'll be working on?
No, not right now. It's funny, like, a lot of the acting stuff I've had really just come up by chance. I have an agent in Los Angeles, and I have one in London, and my London agent recently has been coming through quite a lot of stuff, and she, but it's the same as anything, you audition and you see what happens. Right now, there's nothing I can think of that's booked, but I'm always keeping it on the back burner. It's not something I really go out of my way to actively pursue. I will say this: I did get submitted for that part in the Bond movie that Batista got. I was very upset.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Now we have to ask you real quick. I know you're a very busy person, but we find ourselves asking all of our guests this a lot. But what are you looking most forward to in the future, whether it be through wrestling or just life in general? What are some of your goals in the future?
Well, what I'm looking forward to right now is being part of something, from on the ground floor, but like global. Jeff is affording me some opportunities to for stuff like global outside of wrestling. In the sense of giving me some more responsibilities, which is good for me because I have a real sort of entrepreneurial drive, that I want to try and exercise a little bit, and I'll be sort of doing some more of that stuff. And thanks to my time at TNA, I've been able to build up a little bit of capital to be able to maybe look into some more stuff. So that's right now. It's like I'm very excited about working, like doing things on an entrepreneurial level. We just announced Global's first UK dates. We're not swinging for the fences. You know what I mean? We're starting slow. We're not going to run before we can walk. We're booking good venues, but they're not arenas. They're good sized venues, but they're not arenas. And I'm having a big part in. I'm actively involved in that, which I'm very excited about, and I'm really enjoying working on a sort of administrative level with the UK shows. So I want to do everything I can to make sure they're a success. And just looking out for for new opportunities, working with new people, and exploring the business on different levels. We've got Mickey and I have got the first Superstar seminar, which we're doing here in Richmond on August 8th and 9th. We've got Bill DeMott as our guest trainer who's taking the first seminar. It's a 2-day seminar, and we've had really good response to that. Like, places are filling up fast with a lot of enrollments. That's going to be something we continue to do, not just here in Richmond, but all over the world. So yeah, I'm just enjoying, branching out and adding some strings to my bow, some within wrestling and some outside of it.
That's great. Now, Nick, for anybody listening right now that may not follow you on social media or whatnot, can you let them know where to keep up with you these days?
Sure. Website is nickaldis.com, nickaldis.com, and you can email me for bookings, nick@nickaldis.com. My Twitter is still @MagnusOfficial. That's what it's going to stay that way for now. And my Instagram is @Nick Aldis. So they're my outlets you can get me at the moment.
Perfect. Nick, we really appreciate you coming on today. We wish you nothing but the best with the new book, and all the best to you in your future wrestling career. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for having me on.
I want to thank Nick Magnus Aldis. Thank you so much for joining us on another wrestling podcast. Go out and get his book as well when we're talking about things. He really has a good plan for people who want to try to, get in shape. So go out there and look for his book. We can't say enough good things about him. Can't wait to have him back on the show.
Definitely.
And you know what, Steve?
Yeah.
We were still talking about
If you're an American before you go in the bathroom, what are you when you're in the bathroom?
Oh my God!
European, European, baby. That's the only joke I have for tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
You told a joke?
That was the joke. European.
Oh, okay.
If you're in the bathroom.
Yeah, I got it.
European.
I got it.
European.
Yep. You're done. You're done. There's so many great talents we spoke about that are from Europe. They're constantly coming in to the WWE. There's a lot of them in the Performance Center right now. Do you have a favorite European right now?
My favorite European, Jonathan, is Finn Balor, of course. The body paint stands out. Incredible athlete, doing stuff nobody else is doing right now. Hopefully he moves up soon to the high ranks of the main roster. But, I'm still can't wait to see what he does with the NXT Championship. But, yeah, man, definitely him. And I know there's a lot of other guys still in developmental who could one day, well, never really hold the European Championship, but maybe fit into that little category we were talking about, right?
I was really hoping now that Wade Barrett was back on the prowl. He's the king. I was hoping that they would give him the European championship because he was the Intercontinental Champion there for a while, and I thought he would maybe switch it up.
Then even Rusev, even that they had that opportunity to do it, and it was just like, we don't know. They didn't want to bring it back.
What they could have done too is they could have splintered that off of the whole Cena-Rusev feud. Whenever Cena beat him at WrestleMania, then he could have came out the next night and said, "Well, you may have beat me for the United States Championship, but you did not beat me for the European Championship," and it would have been a cool little angle that could have went on for a while. But
And I know there's a Mark though sitting at home listening, being like, "But guys, they unified the belt with the Intercontinental Championship." And we know. We're just saying that.
Well, let's not alienate our audience here, Steve. And, I'm sure you don't all sound like that.
I was just going
but maybe you do. I don't know.
Assumption.
Yeah, you're done for the night. For the fans that we didn't just lose, if you like what you're hearing right now, we urge you to follow us on all forms of social media. We mentioned Twitter earlier, but we have a huge presence on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. That is youtube.com/anotherwrestlingpod. They will not let us put the entire name.
I know.
It's not our fault. We are youtube.com/anotherwrestlingpod. You get YouTube exclusives that you won't find anywhere else. You get Independent Spotlight, which we have just started, and our first one coming out of the gate was amazing. We had none other than Dick Justice on there, and we have lots of things coming up, but there's new videos all the time. Be sure to subscribe to us, talk to us on there, and also comment on our videos.
That's right, guys. We want to hear from you. That's the whole important part of this, is to communicate with us. Let us know what you love, what you hate, what I'm doing right, what Jonathan is doing wrong, all the fun stuff and important things in life, Jonathan, for another wrestling podcast. But that's what keeps the show going, hearing from you guys out there, letting us know, things that we may have missed or things that we should have talked about. And hey, let us know who your favorite European champion was, because that's what we're kind of talking about right now. Jonathan, you mentioned, though, the Attitude Era had so many stars deserving of titles. Now today you can kind of take a lot of those stars because they kind of have European gimmicks, in a sense, and give them the European Championship. But, I don't know. Do you think it could be resurrected? Do you think it still has a chance? Or would it just be a flop? All in all.
I think that there's some nostalgic feel to it. I think that there's people that are in and around our age that probably grew up with the Attitude Era, and it would probably be cool for for a while. I don't think it would last a very long time just because of the restrictions that they would have on it. There's only so many European wrestlers that are there, but if they opened it up to anybody, I think it would be cool to bring back for maybe like a year or whatever, and every now and then dust it off. But like they used to have the Night of Champions pay-per-view where they could bring out that title, and I think it could be more of like a King of the Ring situation where, only European people were allowed to wrestle for it, and then they get the honor of being the European champion for like a year, and then they have to defend it against the next person at the next year or something like that. That's my way of thinking. I don't think that everybody subscribes to Jonathanisms.
Well, there you go. All right, guys. Well, we barely scratched the surface, Jonathan, and I need a new going-to kind of phrase. But we talked a little bit about the European Championship, some of our thoughts, some of the things we thought about, some of the stuff we like, some of the stuff we hate. We could talk about it again. We can get more into it on another show. But guys, once again, let us know what you heard, what you loved, what you hated. And we'll get back to you, and maybe we'll make a European Championship Part 2 one day. But Jonathan, all in all, man, there's a lot of things happening in the world. There's a lot of things happening with Another Wrestling Podcast, so stay tuned to AnotherWrestlingPodcast.com. Guys and gals and children of all ages, you don't want to miss anything, because we have a few surprises up our sleeve, and we're not going to tell you, so stay tuned is what we kind of want to get at, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the kind of the whole idea behind the surprise, Steve. But another huge thank you to Nick Aldis today, Calling Spots Magazine. You can come see us live August 1st. Steve, where will we be August 1st?
Jonathan, we're going to be at Duchess Stadium for Wrestling Under the Stars for Northeast Wrestling. We're going to be hanging out with Lanny Poffo, who's going to be hanging out with us. He's bringing the Macho Man's Hall of Fame ring in. We're going to, be hanging out with Lanny, meeting and greeting fans, and enjoying that whole show. So, guys, if you're around the Wappingers Falls area, come on down to Duchess Stadium and meet Lanny Poffo.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be two geniuses and Steve, so stop by. You can get pictures with us. We don't bite, and maybe we'll have a little thing where you can stump the geniuses. It would be amazing to meet you guys. So we will be there. None other than the genius, like you mentioned. Ric Flair is going to be there. Rey Mysterio Jr., Matt Taven, Northeast Wrestling Champ. Alberto El Patron, the Young Bucks. I can go on and on and on. Just be at the show. Tickets are still available. There's a meet and greet that day, and live in the Hudson Valley here. So if you are a native of this area, stop on by and come say hello to Another Wrestling Podcast.
That's right, Jonathan. And one last thing, if you head on over to AnotherWrestlingPodcast.com, scroll over to About Us, go down to Sponsorship. If you guys want to be sponsored on our show, let us know. We have many different levels of sponsorship, so check out the site. We'll come to your show, we'll plug your show, and hey, we'll do some business. Another Wrestling Podcast and Another Wrestling Company. So guys, check us out. We'll get you on the show. We'll talk about your show, and we'll have fun in the process of getting out to all of the 15,000 followers on Twitter and the millions around the world, Jonathan, who listen to Another Wrestling Podcast. So check us out, guys, and maybe we'll be in a town near you one day.
Another Wrestling Podcast.